Good evening, everyone. It is Wednesday, June the 17th, 2020. It is currently 5:28 p.m. Central Time, and I'm coming to you live from Victory Baptist Church. Yes, I am here at Victory Baptist Church for the Wednesday evening service, but that doesn't start till 7 p.m. So when I'm here and I have the opportunity, you know what I'm going to do. You know I'm going to hook up the microphone. You know I'm going to hit the big red go live button, and I'm going to go live on the air to talk about things happening in our world and try to offer you a theological perspective. Now, let me see, what day was it, all right? I got to clear all the notifications, getting all these podcast notifications right now, and there's a lot coming in. But on June the 14th, yes, June the 14th, I did a program that I called Coming Genetic Apocalypse. Coming Genetic Apocalypse. And the goal of that program was to try to get us, or try to ask the question, how should Christians think about issues related to human genetic testing and manipulation? Now, in that episode, you should definitely go back and listen to that, Coming Genetic Apocalypse, I played the audio from a program that dealt with the subject. And I warned everyone that, hey, this program that we're going to be listening to, it may kind of slide over at times into the conspiratorial thinking, but this whole issue of human cloning, genetic manipulation, all of the things that they want to accomplish, all the things they want to do, these have real ethical questions. Christians definitely should stop and pay attention and do research, but I think everyone, because this could really redefine. If you're cloning, if you're manipulating DNA, if you're if you're trying to manipulate the genetic makeup of human beings to create, quote unquote, healthier human beings, stronger human beings, quote unquote, better human beings, what then does it mean to be human? How do we define what it means to be human? What is human life, and how much can you manipulate it to that life form stops being human and it becomes something else? These are real questions. And I know at one time these were questions for crazy people late at night listening to weird talk shows that aired overnight. Or it was weird conversations for people reading comic books or watching, science fiction movies. But this is now real life, and we need to talk about it. So I talked about it there, and what was hilarious is I aired that on, I believe, Sunday. I think that was Sunday when we aired that program, or when I did that program live. And then was it yesterday? It may have been Monday or Tuesday. I'm looking at my news feed at news articles, and I come across this news article. I mean, you talk about the perfect timing, all right? I come across this headline. Are you ready? Yeah, this was published June the 16th, and we aired our program on, I believe, June the 14th, if I can go back and look. Give me 1 second. Make sure I give you all the right dates. Yes, on June the 14th, we did a program called Coming Genetic Apocalypse. On June the 16th, so 2 days later, this was in the news. Scientists made one small edit to human embryos. It had a lot of unintended consequences. That is the entire headline. Scientists made one small edit to human embryos, and it had a lot of unintended consequences. One small edit to a human embryo, or to human embryos, plural, and it had a lot of unintended consequences. That is what we have to really think about as science continues to move forward. And some countries are going to try to put, regulations and try to stop certain experiments and try to stop certain things from moving forward. But other part of the world, they're not going to offer up those same restrictions. They're going to offer more freedom. They don't view the human life maybe the same way other countries view human life. And as a result, things are going to move forward, and there are going to be unintended consequences. How serious are those consequences going to be? What is it going to mean for human life 10, 15, 20 years from right now? Those are questions we have to ask, but I want to make sure we come down to this. I cannot stress this enough before we read this news article. We live in a time And I think we're seeing this being played out on the news night after night after night, day after day after day. I think it's all around us, and I don't know if we realize this or not. We have reached a point that our culture has obviously turned away from a Christian worldview and a Christian perspective. We're in a post-Christian world. Now, some celebrate that and think that's wonderful, but that's great. If you're going to move away from a Christian worldview, then this is what you have to really define. Does human life have any intrinsic value? Is there any sanctity to the human life? Is there anything sacred to human life? Or is it in reality that all we are evolved animals, and any value we want to give life, any sanctity we want to give life is something that we are simply imposing, that we are simply defining, that, hey, life has value, but in reality, there is no transcendent or intrinsic value. We just happen to be the survival of the fittest, and we outlasted other species. We evolved higher, stronger, and we pushed down anything that would stop our evolution, and we're going to continue to push anything down so that we can move forward. Does life really have any value? And I think we see more and more in our culture that no one thinks life really has any intrinsic value. Now, here's what's bizarre. When something horrible happens, then all of a sudden we rise up and go, no, the dignity of the human, of humanity, the dignity of a man, the dignity of a woman, we need to be treated equal. We need justice for all. We need equality for all. But what is that based off of? If we're all just animals, does it matter? So I think our society, we're starting to see the unintended consequences of devaluing human life. We do not value human life, and that is being played out. And then when we see the unintended consequences of the devaluation of human life, then we're shocked by it. Then we want to scream and argue for some kind of intrinsic value, about dignity, about rights, about justice. And you're like, what is that based off of? So we're going to see these kinds of problems play out because we don't really, when does life begin? Does life have any value? The culture is going to have to answer this because they no longer are going to accept the biblical idea that all human beings are created in the image of God. We would define that life begins at conception, and that because life begins at conception, that life has value, that life is sacred, there's sanctity to it, and we should protect life. All life. We should protect it. And now sometimes Christians are not consistent with their view. But the Christian perspective is that human beings are created in the image of God, and therefore there is a sanctity to that life. There's a sacredness to that life, and we should protect it, and we should treat people with dignity because we're created in the image of God. All people are created in the image of God, therefore they deserve to be treated with dignity. And I think that's how Christians should operate. Now, again, we're not always consistent with it, but that's where that's our foundational starting point. The world has thrown that out. So now they've got to figure it out. And we're seeing the consequences. While we're seeing the consequences play out around us, and laboratories, experiments, and ideas to manipulate and change what a human is underway. Now, at what level, we don't know where it's happening. But here we had scientists, they made a small edit to a human embryo. Now, again, some people in the world don't care what they do to an embryo because they don't see any life there, and you can do anything you want. And again, but this begins to, if you don't see value of life in the womb, how are you going to give life value when it comes out of the womb? And these are the unintended consequences. But these scientists made one small edit. The next thing you know, a lot of unintended consequences. Let's find out exactly what happened. All right, here is the story. A human embryo editing experiment gone wrong has scientists warning against treading into the field altogether. Now, we talked about the coming apocalypse here, the genetic apocalypse, on, Sunday. And now here we are on June the 16th, just 2 days after it. The next thing you know, so yesterday, a news article comes out saying, hey, a human embryo editing experiment has gone wrong, and scientists are warning against treading into the field altogether. We need to stop. I don't think there's any stopping at this point. But this is what happened. To understand the role of a single gene in early human development, a team of scientists at the London-based Francis Crick Institute removed it from a set of 18 donated embryos. Even though the embryos were destroyed after just 14 days, that was enough time for the single edit to transform into major unintended edits. Human gene editing is a taboo topic. The birth of 2 genetically modified babies in 2018 proved incredibly controversial, and editing embryos beyond experimentation is not allowed in the United States. The scientists in London conducted a short-term research on a set of 25 donated embryos using the CRISPR technique to remove a gene from 18 of them. Now, please remember, the CRISPR technique was talked about in on Sunday and the program I did. So you really should go back and listen to that. Let me continue. So they used the CRISPR technique to remove a gene from 18 of the embryos. An analysis later revealed 10 of those edited embryos looked normal, but that the other 8 revealed abnormalities, if I can speak right, abnormalities across a particular chromosome. So I want you to hear that again. 10 of those edited embryos looked normal, but the other 8 revealed abnormalities across a particular chromosome. Of them, 4 contained inadvertent deletions or additions of DNA directly adjacent to the edited gene. The unintended edits exemplify the single biggest concern of gene editing, especially when it involves humans. And to one gene editing expert and professor of molecular and cell biology at the University of California, Berkeley, it sends a clear message. This is a restraining order for all genome editors to stay the living daylights away from embryo editing. That's his words. All right. Here's this expert on this saying, hey, this is a restraining order to all genome editors. Stay the living daylights away from embryo editing. Stop doing it. The results of this experiment were published in the preprint server bioRxiv, which is yet to be peer-reviewed and published in a medical journal. So it hasn't been peer-reviewed yet, hasn't been published in a medical journal. At some point it will. Maybe it will get some attention. Maybe it will wake some people up, and maybe people will stop. But here's the thing. I don't care what they publish. There's going to continue to be moves for cloning. There's going to be moves for genetic editing, genetic designer babies, genetic designer animals, genetic manipulation to possibly, fix things that we don't like about ourselves, fix baldness, fix you name it. That we're going to try to create this utopia where all human beings are basically perfect. We can edit out all the things that we don't like about ourselves, all the imperfections, and I guess we can have, a world of perfect people. Now, the one thing you cannot edit out, and this is theological, you can make everyone look perfect. You can remove all physical imperfections. You cannot remove human depravity from the heart. But what happens when you manipulate, and then you end up with something that maybe isn't even really human anymore? Is that even possible? Look, how do we understand cloned individuals? How do we move forward? This raises all kinds of theological questions, ethical questions, but I believe we're not going to stop this. I truly believe somehow, once the technology becomes more and more understood, the technology becomes more and more available, someone's going to take it. Someone's going to get the materials they need, and they're going to be in a lab somewhere, and they're working on something. And the next thing you know, they're going to reveal it to the world, and it's going to be. I don't know what the unintended consequences are. I don't know. Like, I don't want to be conspiratorial thinking and slide into wild speculation. But I mean, it's just weird. On June the 14th, I do a program going, okay, hey, we're going to listen to this audio. They're talking about this coming genetic apocalypse. I think maybe a little bit of this could be conspiratorial thinking. So let's be careful, but let's at least listen to this. And then 2 days later, oh, by the way, we did some editing and of an embryo, and well, things didn't quite go right in some of the cases. We some things were deleted, some things were added, and you're like, whoa, wait a minute, you're talking about the genetic code of human beings. You're not talking about, well, we tried to do this to this computer and we lost some data, but we found some new data. No, we're talking about people, human life. I think it's something we're really, 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 really going to have to think about. And I think what will happen is we're going to move forward. And I don't think many churches are even thinking of the theological ramifications and all of things. And I don't think the world, especially right now when there's so many other things going on in the world. And just think about this. Right now, and I'll end with this. Just think about this. Right now, we're in the middle of this pandemic situation, and we got the COVID-19 situation. You've got cases spiking, and I think in at least 8 states in the United States of America. You got the situation developing again in China. We've got some crazy things happening. Many doctors, I spoke to my doctor, and she believes September, we're going to have a major spike, and everything's going to go crazy again in September. I don't know if she's right, but some people are talking about a second wave. I don't even feel like the first wave has even ended. So who knows? But let's say there's a second wave, and it's massive. It's massive. And let's say the thing starts spreading again, and this time maybe it even has mutated, and it's even more deadly than the first wave. And let's just say the numbers of deaths start increasing dramatically. And now, well over 50% of the population is scared to death. All right, let's just imagine this. And I'm just painting a scenario. And then someone comes forward and go, you know what? If we could do some genetic, manipulation, some cloning, if we got more freedom here, we could possibly find a way to maybe edit people's DNA so that future generations would never be able to get a pandemic, to be able to stop from ever getting sick from this disease or this disease. You don't think you would immediately get the majority of people to say yes, pass a bill, give them the freedom, give them the green light? I think you would. I think the pandemic kind of situation, all it takes is a little fear. And you give people enough fear, they're willing to say, they'll throw out their own liberty, they'll throw out their own rights, they'll throw out the Constitution, they'll throw out anything for safety, for security, for the promise of health and happiness. They will throw out and give up so much. So I just think we're in a very vulnerable time. And I think a lot of these experiments are going on under the radar. And I think at some point, either something's going to be revealed or someone's going to say, hey, if you give us a green light, we can do all of this good. And, well, next thing you know, it's open, the box is open and there's no closing it again. So I just wanted to bring that update. I thought it was interesting. They tried it and it didn't go. It caused some problems. There was unintended consequences. New data, loss of data. You have some things happening that they did not intend. And if they cannot control it, then where does this end? And now we'll wait for the peer review. I want it to be published in a medical journal. I want that peer review. I want to read it. I want to see what they have to say. And we'll see. But I just thought that was an interesting timeline. Hey, on June the 4th, let's talk about the genetic apocalypse. Some of this is conspiratorial. June the 16th, hey, we did it, and there was unintended consequences. So I just think that worked out pretty interesting. All right, I would love to get your thoughts on all of this. Email me at newsif@yahoo.com. All right, everyone have a great day. I'll be live on the air at 7 p.m. for the VBC Bible Institute. Wednesday evening service is going to be for the VBC Bible Institute, and we're going to be dealing with Genesis chapter 3. So if you haven't been following along with the VBC Bible Institute, you probably should subscribe to that podcast, all right? Because it's a Bible Institute, but it's a podcast, and you're free to listen or you're free to be a participant in it. It's up to you. But yeah, that will be live on the air at 7 p.m. If you need help in how to tune in live, email me immediately at newsif@yahoo.com. newsif@yahoo.com. All right, everyone have a great evening. And, pay attention to what's happening in the world around you because every day it seems to get crazier and crazier. God bless.